now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show with your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
It is the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, your destination for all things gardening, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, 855, 60 videos. We're putting out 12 to 14 videos a week, so you can sign up for our weekly email under the Be the First to Know, and you'll get all of that in one email every week, so you don't miss a thing, as well as downloadable replays of this show, as well as in-studio video and short segments of the radio show in video form.
So we have Christy Wilhelmi. She is the driving force behind GardenNerd.com. Her obsession with gardening began in 1996 on the balcony of her Los Angeles, California apartment. Christy believes that gardening unifies both physical activity and healthy food choices while providing a grounding spiritual and creative outlet. She has dedicated herself to the study of organic gardening and its benefits. She's also the author of Gardening for Geeks. Welcome to the show, Christy.
Thanks for having me.
Well, so happy you've taken time and got up early over there in the Los Angeles area to join us on the program today.
Sure. Yeah, it's we were hoping for some rain today, but if it's under 40% chance, it usually means it's not going to. But we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Well, whenever I was looking at your website, GardenNerd.com, came across an interesting article that you had about candle making. You're a candle maker, and you have a very important reason why people should either make or purchase beeswax candles versus the normal candles that we all see. What is that reason?
Well, if we look at the energy first, how much energy it takes to produce a candle made from beeswax versus petroleum. Paraffin. Paraffin is a petroleum derivative, so you have to drill it out of the ground and refine it, and that takes a lot of energy. Whereas bees are making it from their bodies. It's a fat that they create in order to build comb, and we clean out our beehive when we harvest honey. We cut and strain, so we crush and strain our wax, and then we save that wax and form it into candles. The other reason is paraffin contains some carcinogenic elements like benzene and toluene, which I'm not exactly sure I'm pronouncing correctly, but those are the same contaminants found in diesel fuel. So if you think about burning that inside your house, it's off-gassing in a way that's kind of harmful to your health. And then really, for me as a candle maker, I used to have a candle making business, and I was using paraffin, and paraffin is white, and so you dye it and scent it, and the wax dyes and the scents are the thing that makes such a mess in your kitchen when you're making candles, whereas beeswax has a beautiful natural hue to it, so most people leave it in its natural state, and therefore it's easier to work with and doesn't make such a mess.
So that would explain why when you light one of these candles that are not beeswax, you get that black soot that comes off of it.
Yeah, and that has to do a little bit with the wick. So you can make your own wick. If you have a beeswax candle, you can make your own wick as well. I believe it's been a long time since I've done it, but basically you're soaking cotton string in a saltwater solution and then wax, the wax that you're going to be forming the candle with. And then you don't have as much of that black soot going on.
Interesting. Now, in your classes, consultations, and speaking endeavors, what have you found to be the most universal common question from gardeners or want-to-be gardeners?
Everybody wants to know, how do I kill this bug? Whatever bug is eating their garden. And my first point of education is usually around, well, first of all, is it bad or good? There's a lot of beneficial bugs that we need in our gardens, and I try and encourage people to create a balance between good and bad bugs in their gardens so that they don't have any one thing taking over the place, and that the good bugs can combat the bad, and you have a balance so that you don't actually have to do anything about it. And if you have beneficial insectaries growing around your garden, meaning flowers that attract pollinators and parasitic pests, good bugs to the garden, they will attack and consume and take care of the problem for you. So I may have an organic bug spray on my shelf, but I never really use it.
And whether you and for people who are uneducated, let's use that term, they go and buy a chemical and spray in their garden. That chemical kills all the bugs. It just doesn't kill what it's targeted or what you want it to kill.
You're right. It doesn't discriminate between good and bad, and most of them are so either. Well, it depends on what it is, but they either suffocate, or even organic sprays will either suffocate or strip the protective coating off of the pest, or disrupt its internal organs and its endocrine. I don't think that's the right word. The endocrine system, but the internal organs will. Like glyphosate will disrupt the organs and rupture them is the word I'm looking for. So you don't want to use those things. Not a good idea.
We're in springtime, and you can't turn on the TV without seeing a commercial for weed and feed. When planting, let's see here, and people will go buy this for their lawn. Why? And it's not organic. And why is it such a bad thing for people to go buy this and apply it to their grasses and lawns to kill those bad weeds or what they think are bad weeds?
That's a good question. So let's tackle the weed part first. Usually those weed and feeds contain a chemical called 2,4-D, which is listed by our EPA as a low toxin to humans, but it is possibly cancer-causing. And if you think about it, we're not low to the ground when we're running around on grass. Our pets and our children are, though, and so they're more susceptible to it. And 2,4-D is designed to change the way that cells grow. So if you think about that on a molecular level, that's causing disruption in the way, it's causing mutations and disruptions in the way that things grow. So not really great when you think about that in terms of human growth. And then the feed part of that is it contains synthetic fertilizers, and synthetic fertilizers have salts. They're high in salts, which can throw off your soil microbiology balance in your soil food web. That's the creatures, the microbes that live in the soil that keep everything flowing as far as nutrients go for the plants. But synthetic nutrients bond to water molecules and go wherever water goes, which is usually down into the water table. And synthetic fertilizers almost always have much higher concentrations of nutrients than organics do, and therefore much higher than what the plant actually needs. And so what the plant doesn't take up will bond to those water molecules and go down into the water table and out to our waterways, which, if I am correct, Wisconsin borders a lake. So, your waterways end up getting saturated with nitrates, which, if for those uninitiated, nitrates help with green leafy growth.
And algae bloom, yeah.
Exactly. So that's what grows in waterways. So algae blooms rob oxygen out of the water, and then fish die. So it creates this cycle of death, and you get those dead zones in your waterways and pollutants as well. So it's not a good thing.
There are actually dead zones in Lake Michigan as a result of that.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So weed and feed, not my favorite thing.
And you can find, there's YouTubers, and I'm not going to name them on the air, that say, well, as long as you use the synthetic or chemical fertilizer the way it's recommended, you'll have no problem. It doesn't hurt you, it doesn't hurt the environment, which is a bunch of you-know-what.
Well, most people don't follow directions. I mean, very, very few people measure out what's the recommended amount.
If a little is good, a lot is better.
Exactly, and that is definitely not true in this case.
Right.
Okay, so we all have limited space, and in the book you talk about biointensive planting. Without giving too much away, what does that mean, and is it possible or doable for everybody?
Sure. Biointensive planting, biointensive is an umbrella term for growing a lot of stuff in a little bit of space. And in the book, I talk about 4 different methods of biointensive gardening: biodynamics, French intensive, grow biointensive, which is John Jevons' ecology action thing, and square foot gardening, which is the most approachable of the 4. Mel Bartholomew created square foot gardening, and it's the concept of growing things closer together and basically keeping the ground covered. So anytime a crop comes out, a new one goes in right away after re-amending the soil with compost, and you're constantly growing. And so you have to amend the soil really, really well in order to support that kind of intensity. But it's doable for everyone in small spaces and large.
Well, I was happy to see when I was watching one of your YouTube videos that you did this planting tree right, and I'm going to ask you why you did it. People, when they plant trees, bare root or container that comes out of a container, they'll fill the hole with a tremendous amount of compost and enriched soil. They don't use the native soil, and then they strap that tree down like it's a radio tower on top of a hill. These are two negative things, and can you explain why you don't want to do neither one of these?
Right. Trees want to grow in native soil, and if you give them this really rich soil right around the root ball, they're not going to. The roots aren't going to travel out. They'll hit this barrier at the end of that hole, and hit native soil and be like, "Oh, I don't want to go anywhere," and they'll just sort of circle. So planting in native soil, I usually add a little bit of compost just to help with drainage and aeration and microbes, so that the tree will get a good start, and then it will mix. I'll mix that in with native soil so that it's not such a shock to the system when the root system reaches outside of that. And then you said something about tying it to a telephone pole.
Well, no, they strap it down to fence post, right. and they don't allow the tree to move.
Right, yeah, and you're supposed to put a post on either side with loose bands around the trunk of the tree so that it has wind blowing it and it forces it to form a stronger trunk. It helps with it growing rather than just tying it to a tree, to a stake on its own. So, yeah, it helps the tree grow.
Now,
do it right.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When people who just add that organic rich soil around their root ball, as the tree grows, it's going to continue to grow, but it's going to be very weak and it's going to be more susceptible to strong winds, and there's not going to be a foundation. It's just going to topple over. Am I wrong on this or right?
Yeah, if your soil, if you just plant it in like a commercial potting soil and it's not, your native soil is usually more compacted than that. It can absolutely just fall over, depending on where you live and what your weather conditions are. Out here, it's not as harsh, and so people can get away with it a little bit longer. But generally speaking, it's not a good idea.
Right.
So, how can people get a free copy of your organic gardening tips that you mentioned on your website, and then also where can people find your book?
Oh, sure. So if you go to gardennerd.com, that's GARDENERD.com, you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, our monthly Garden Nerd Gazette, and you'll be sent a link for your free top tips. And that's also where you can find Gardening for Geeks or anywhere books are sold.
Absolutely. Well, Christy, we appreciate you coming on the program and sharing some of your gardening wisdom, not only with Holly and myself, but our listeners.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.